Well, you said that the cartels don't respect L.A. Mexican gangsters.
Yeah, I kind of stand by that. I
How
know.
so? Explain.
Well, they don't view them as really Mexican, I don't think. You
Well,
know?
they're Chicano, which
They're
is
Chicano.
Mexican American.
But I've heard, I've heard gabacho thrown around from, we've been down in Mexico filming, we've been to Culiacan. We've talked to these guys, we talked to bodyguards who were guarding El Mayo, a year and a half before he gets arrested. So,
Wow.
We've had our Chicano, a guy who's a Chicano, like a crew member with us, and they call him gabacho. So, yeah.
Gabacho means what?
Gabacho means like white boy. They usually use it to refer to white boys.
Huh, okay.
Gabacho Ojuero. But so now they're calling this brown guy who's from LA a gabacho Ojuero.
That's crazy. Okay.
So they are not the same, and they don't look at Mexican Americans like they're paisa.
But don't they work with the American Mexican gangs to distribute their stuff?
They do for sure. But it's not.
It's not exclusive.
It's not exclusive, and I really doubt that they are. Yeah, it's not exclusive, and I think most of the work now is dumped off COD. From what I can tell, and from who I talked to really high level people on both sides of the law, the cartel rarely has their own people posted up in cities anymore, getting it off for them. They might have somebody who warehouses the meth in Bakersfield, but from there, they're selling it COD, wholesale, cash, to freelancers, and then boom, fleeing back across the border. So it's not, it's very decentralized now, the cartel, and that happened definitely, it's been coming for a long time with the way that technology is, but after Chapo fell in 2016, I believe, for the final time when he got extradited, the Sinaloa cartel completely, it's separated into two factions, the Chapitos and the Maitos, right? People loyal to Mayo. And now they're basically become like a paramilitary army who protects independent drug traffickers. Does that make sense? And once it reaches the United States, they take the money and it's out of their hands.
Well, I've had 5 people on my show that I've interviewed that have died of fentanyl overdoses. Most recently, Rich Homie Quan.
Wow.
There was also, Coolio, Gangster Boo, Aaron Carter.
Did you have Omar? Michael?
No, I'd met him, but I never interviewed him.
He died of fentanyl-laced weed.
Yeah.
What is his name? Michael?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. God damn it. Michael B. Coop?
No, the guy who played Omar on the Wire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I named 4 people. I know there's one other person who I've interviewed who's died. Mac Miller. Did I mention him?
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
Mac Miller. That was the last one. Now, but you said that the cartels are not the ones that are adding fentanyl to the cocaine.
Nope. I'm convinced of that. Now, nobody knows for sure a lot of the cartel business because it's taken from, journalists who talk to them, and the game is different across the board. But one thing I'm pretty certain of is that they are not the ones that are mixing the fentanyl with the coke. Why would they do that? In fact, they started pressing fentanyl into colorful pills when people really started overdosing a couple of years ago as a way to try to keep the coke separate, right? So if you're in America and you see some off-colored powder you're about to sniff and it's got a reddish hue, a bluish hue, an orange hue, you should probably stay away from that.
Yeah, man, it's crazy because, I've never taken cocaine, period.
Good,
in my life,
yeah.
Period. This is a fact. A friend of mine died at 23 off of cocaine, and I went to that funeral saying, I'm never going to try this.
Yeah.
And, just recently I was in Atlanta. I just finished an interview with an artist down there, and a couple of guys walked in, when he walked out, and they offered cocaine to me because they were fans. And I'm looking at him going like, this is crazy. Like, who would take cocaine from a couple of randoms that you just met right then and there?
Yeah.
With the amount of people dying. Me and Gangster Boo hung out like 3 weeks before she died.
Mm.
it's so rampant and it's so deadly that it just stuns that people actually take street drugs anymore.
It's crazy.
But this is a thing. And
Yep.
and it was interesting. I mean, I assumed that the cartels were cutting it or whatever else, but I guess it makes sense. You know, who wants to send over a bunch of product that kills all the users?
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying it's the actual dealers that are cutting it.
It's the American dealers that were stretching their coke with fentanyl.
But doesn't the actual fentanyl come from China?
Like China to the ports in Mexico. I think, what is it called? Manzanillo in Colima. And it also goes through the ports of Canada, Vancouver. Now you see Chinese gangs in Vancouver starting to press fentanyl, which is wild.
So
but yeah,
people are taking fentanyl straight?
yes. And in fact, and you can look this up, fentanyl overdoses are down this year.
Really?
Yes. And that's because people are getting a tolerance to it. It's basically a brand
People
new...
are getting a tolerance to fentanyl.
And they're just doing the fentanyl now. Yes. So
That's crazy.
It's crazy. So people obviously are still dying because they're getting these mixed drugs. But yeah, the population is now building up a tolerance. And that, because demand is not down. I'm convinced of that. I don't think demand is down. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I remember when I interviewed Turk, you know, from the Hot Boys, he said something interesting. Because I remember I brought up, it was a lyric he had, something like, yeah, we trying to get that stuff that killed that boy. And he talked about how, you know, in these drug communities, when the drug addicts find out that a certain batch killed somebody, they actually rush to that. As opposed to common sense saying, okay, we want to stay away from it. They actually rush to it because they know that it's the strongest stuff out there, and they're trying to get so high where they're on the edge of death.
Yeah.
So if you're really a hardcore drug addict, you're actually excited that fentanyl's mixed in with your drugs as opposed to being terrified of it.
I think originally that was in heroin. That was like if somebody OD'd, that's a really good batch.
Yeah.
I don't know that now people are excited about mixed drugs. I think they want the new heroin, which is fentanyl, you know?
Right. And these days, the pills have really taken over completely. You look at, for example, the NBA YoungBoy drug case where he has something like 65 charges in Utah where he was calling in, you know, prescriptions and having girls call in for him. And he would like pretend, you know, change his voice and everything. And I think a lot of that comes from the fear of taking fake pills and dying.
Right.
When it comes from the pharmacy, you at least know that that's a real Xanax or that's a real perk.
Yep.
You know, and even like, for example, you know, Kodak Black, you know, he said, you know, he had that one lyric, you know, I knew the perk was fake, but I still took it because I'm a gremlin. He actually, I think on stage or in an interview addressed that, he said, you know, I actually regret that lyric because this is not something that I do or anyone else should do because it's crazy, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So now you have this, like people understand there's so many fake pills out there laced with fentanyl, whatever else. They're trying to risk their freedom by trying to go to the pharmacies and whatever else.
Right.
I mean, have you seen you know, because you were involved in pills like that. Have you seen the pill thing just kind of skyrocket?
I wasn't involved in pills at all.
Yeah.
I always stayed away. So, shit. I mean, yeah, I think in the hoods now, and, you know, I could just go off anecdotal evidence, but like, yeah, down in Watts and all these places in the ghetto, it's like kids are taking these fentanyl pills that are like, whatever, 20 milligrams, or well, whatever the fuck it, not 20 milligrams of fentanyl that would kill a fucking elephant, but they're called like 20s.
Yeah.
And they've maybe they're mixed with whatever, but the main ingredient is the small amount of fentanyl. So I don't know.
I mean, it's crazy.
I have no solution except that, like, yeah, there's a real deep spiritual problem in communities